Where does Spencer Martin fit into the Hurricanes goaltending picture? We talk about that in this episode of Locked On Hurricanes.
You're Locked On Hurricanes, your daily podcast on the Carolina Hurricanes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, Caniacs. I'm your host, Jared Ellis, and you're listening to Locked On Hurricanes on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And as always, thank you for making Locked On Hurricanes your first listen of the day, whenever you're listening, morning, noon, afternoon, night, whenever. Thank you. I appreciate it. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. Now, Spencer Martin, the Hurricanes claimed him off of waivers a while back, folks, and it is at the time when it was made, we're all just saying, oh, okay, whatever. Yeah, it's just a move to fill a roster spot, pretty much. And Spencer Martin has really changed the narrative around him and the Hurricanes in what he has been able to do this year for them. It's very limited. I've been saying that for a little bit. It's very limited in what he has been able to do for them. He's 3-0-1 on the season this year for them so far. Posting a .925 save percentage with the Hurricanes so far, and it's played really well for them. It's beat Vegas, beat Boston, also beat Chicago, but took down two really big teams. And you remember in that game, those back-to-backs, Vegas and Arizona and Vegas, excuse me, we kind of all thought, all right, Martin will get Vegas, or Martin will get Arizona, Kochetkov will get Vegas. We all pretty much thought that, but that ended up not being the case, and it's panned out well for the Hurricanes. He's played very well. He beat Boston, beat Vegas, and it's played really well, made some great saves for the Hurricanes. So where is he going to fit in? Because at the time, we just kind of thought, okay, he's just there to fill a spot until Ronta comes back. But we're at the point now where I'm wondering if that's going to be the case. Obviously, Ronta has been out for close to a month now. We're coming up on a month. March 8th will be a month. It's February 29th, leap day year, or leap year day, excuse me. So interesting. It's a very interesting position he's in. Obviously, Pyotr Kochetkov is going to stay the Hurricanes' number one goalie, at least as things stand right now, with Martin, Kochetkov, Ronta, and Anderson. Kochetkov is going to stay the number one goalie. Martin is not going to take that from him, barring an injury or some massive collapse. That's not going to happen. So, where is he going to fit in? That's a very interesting question. I think when Ronta comes back, I think initially Martin will get bumped to the number 3 role. He'll be kind of, whether it be going to the AHL or press box or whatever. I think Martin will initially get bumped to that number 3 role. And then, depending on how Ronta plays, should he be able to come back, play really well, or then it'll probably stay that way. But should Ronta come back and it just not be there and he just can't put it together, Martin 100% will go back into that number 2 role for the Hurricanes. I really think that's what's going to happen here. Obviously, Freddie Anderson being a wild card of does he come back this year? Really no timetable on that. Again, he's obviously practicing with the team, but there's still no guarantee that, again, he'll even play again this year. So, you gotta factor that in. Is that gonna be something there? And then, of course, where's, trade? Do they make a trade at the deadline? Are they confident in Kochekov, Martin, Ranta? We'll say Anderson as well, even though, I don't necessarily think, he'll, play much of a factor, going down this second half of the season into the playoffs at this point. So it's very interesting. It's very, very interesting. And he is also a pending UFA at the end of the season. So he's also playing for a job. So that's another thing to factor in here. Like he's hasn't been a guy that has really stayed in the NHL a whole lot. He's kind of been a guy that's back and forth and all that. Um, so is this chance like, oh, like Steph Nason, like Jalen Chatfield, like, oh, he finally got him a good chance and a good opportunity to showcase his talents and what he can do. He's got a good team playing in front of him. So does he stick around also? That's another question. Um, but I do think, he is likely for the remainder of the season at least going to be the Hurricanes' number 2 goaltender. Next season will be very interesting as well because, again, he is a pending UFA. He's played really well for the Hurricanes this year. So, should he be able to keep that up, then maybe the Hurricanes try to keep him around, keep him in their system. Um, Next season, I don't necessarily see him being on the Hurricanes roster, but he could totally be in the system, honestly. And I think there's a lot of potential there, to add back to the depth of the goaltender position for the Hurricanes that they had, just a few years ago. They're extremely deep, and it's kind of changed as of late, as of this season. So we'll continue to talk about his future for the Hurricanes, with the Hurricanes, right after this quick break, folks. Now, folks, we've talked a lot about game time on this show, and we're going to continue to do that because you shouldn't have to worry when you buy tickets for your next big event. Game time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all of these sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you with killer last minute deals, all in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee. Game time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. I've said before how my personal favorite thing about game time is the views you get from your seats. When me and my friend of mine, when we went to AEW Collision in Greensboro, yeah, that was our favorite thing. Just going around Greensboro Coliseum on the app, trying to figure out where we wanted to sit, because we did not want an obstructed view. We wanted to get a good spot. With all the talent that was on the card, we wanted to get up close and see him. And that's what we were able to do. We got good seats down in the lower bowl, looking directly at the ring, directly at the ramp, and it was fantastic. We had a great night. And then a couple weeks ago, me and a friend, we went to a concert here in Raleigh, and she had to get her ticket last minute, and Game Time had her covered. It was the cheapest around over all the other apps. Game Time really does have you covered for your last minute tickets. They really, really do, folks. And again, my favorite thing is the views from your seat. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKED ON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use code LOCKED ON. That's LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest priced, guaranteed. Now, folks, getting back into Spencer Martin. Again, I think he'll likely be the Hurricanes' number 2 for the remainder of this year. Again, barring a trade, Bronte or Anderson coming back and not missing a step, I think Martin will be the number 2 for the Hurricanes this year. Next season is where things get interesting for him. Gennari said he's a pending UFA. So is Antti Raanta. I've said before, Antti Raanta is probably going to be out, whether or not he signs somewhere else or retires. I think he's going to be done in a Hurricanes uniform after this season. Spencer Martin is interesting because another thing I haven't mentioned, he's only 28 years old. Both Anderson and Raanta are 32. Kochetkov is 24. So obviously Kochetkov is your guy long term, long term, with his age. But Martin, also being on the right side of 30, you know, it, that's something I think that the Hurricanes might be thinking about. Should he uh, be able to sustain his good level of play that he's been at? Again, still very, very early, only played in 4 games, but has had played really well in those 4 games. And as we've talked about in game previews and whatnot, it's like, okay, I don't necessarily hate, Spencer Martin getting the start here. He's played well. So, I think, going into next season, should he continue to have a good remainder of the season, I think the Hurricanes could look at bringing him back. I really do. I don't think he would be coming back in a NHL number 2 role. I think if he did come back, he would be the 3rd guy, a two-way deal. The Hurricanes are obviously adamant about they're going to have an AHL affiliate next year, so that would definitely be something that will help. And honestly, it would probably play a factor into whether or not he would even resign. Um, because like, okay, I'm just going to use this as an example. Say Charlotte comes back as their AHL affiliate. I don't know what their situation with Florida is and whatnot. Don't know. We're just using them as an example. So say he knows, like, all right, Charlotte's going to be their AHL affiliate. They're going to have the an AHL affiliate. They're not going to be sending guys all over the place. So I think that could play a factor there. Um, and I think it would continue to allow him to develop as goalie in the Hurricane system because you look at what he's been in the league for a little while now, for a few years. So you look at all of that. He's been in the league since 2016, 2017. That was his rookie year, Colorado Avalanche. Then, he wasn't really able to get, a whole lot of playing time, over the next few years. Ended up signing with Tampa, traded to Vancouver, and, got a little bit of playing time, not really much in 21, 22. Then obviously played some this year with Vancouver, then Columbus, and now the Hurricanes. So he's definitely bounced around quite a bit. Could definitely be wanting a home, and he's found a situation where things work for him. I could see him wanting to stick around. Again, he's going to be the number 3 guy. Possibly, number 4. We'll see in terms of trade, and then what happens with Freddie, because Freddie is another guy, still has another year left on his deal. So what's gonna happen there? Again, Ronte, he's gonna be out this year, signing somewhere else or retiring. He's gonna be gone. So that role will open up, and Pyotr Kochetkov will slide into that one. So if they make a trade, that'll be interesting this offseason. And of course, there's still no guarantee of whether or not he would even come back. Should the Hurricanes make a trade for a goalie who says, like, okay, yeah, crap, now I'm really going to be down on the pecking order. Do I want to come back? I think the Hurricanes would be smart to bring him back on that 2-way deal. Maybe not like super long term, maybe 1-2 years. just to have that depth there at the goalie position. Like, okay, we'll just say next year, you have Anderson and Kochetkov as probably at that point in Anderson's career, 1A, 1B uh, type thing. And then you have Martin down get in the AHL. We're just going to say Charlotte. Um, then you have that there, and then you have that depth there at the goalie position of guys that can go. That you haven't really had. Again, injuries have really played a factor in that. But you look at when they had um, Anderson, Bronta, Kochetkov, or when they had Mrazek, Reimer, Nedeljkovic, when they had like three guys that could play, we'll see how things go long term of whether or not the goalie position, do they need to make that full upgrade, to get them over the hump. Again, that's where, trade could potentially factor in at the deadline this year because they do have room this year to make a splash. They still may have to move some money out. We'll just have to wait and see on that. But honestly, I think it would be wise for the Hurricanes to bring back Martin. I really do. But in the event that they don't, what happens with him? We'll talk about that right after this quick break, folks. Now, folks, we are over halfway through with the NHL season. But regardless of where the Hurricanes are at in the current standings, I want to remind you that you can win big by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL network. Sleeper is our number one choice for daily fantasy sports and especially daily fantasy hockey because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. All you have to do is pick whether studs like Sebastian Aho, Andrei Svechnikov, Pyotr Kochetkov, or any of your other favorite players across the league will record more or less their sleeper projections for things like goals, assists, saves, plus minuses, and more in a given game. To win 100 times bet on Sleeper, you need to correctly predict the outcome of 8 player stats. You heard me, Canes fans. You can win 100 times your money by playing daily fantasy hockey with Sleeper. So start paying attention and nail your picks so you can start winning big. Use promo code Locked On NHL and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code Locked On NHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability. Now, in the event Martin doesn't come back, I do think that there's obviously that chance, especially with the trade deadline looming. Whether or not the Hurricanes make a move for a goalie, is it going to be a rental goalie or a goalie with term? That's a lot of things that could factor into what the Hurricanes decide to do and what Spencer Martin decides to do. I think that it would be a wise move for them to bring him back on, let's say, like a 2-year, two-way deal, especially if they are seriously going to have an AHL affiliate next year. Bring him back and you know have some depth at that goalie position that you have been lacking. And because he has shown that he can play for you. And again, with all this, this is all going to depend on how he plays the remainder of the season. They have Columbus tonight as of recording. I'm thinking he probably gets a start in this game, gets himself a good revenge game. Columbus, again, last team in the Metro, allowed most goals in the East as of recording. One of the bottom teams in the NHL. So this is obvious. Should he play in this game? That's a good game for him to continue building a case for them to bring him back, or and then of course we got the remainder of the season and playoffs. And then again, let's just say he doesn't want to sign a two-way. He doesn't want to come back to the Hurricanes because he doesn't feel confident in their AHL situation or money or whatever it may be. I think he's going to continue to have a really good rest of the season because it is a contract year for him. He's going to be playing for a job. He's not a guy that's going to be guaranteed a roster spot or anything like that. He's going to have to fight, for, the Hurricanes, for other teams he played for, Columbus, Vancouver, Colorado, any other team, he's going to have to prove that, like, hey, I can play. You need to sign me. It's not just, oh, I'm so and so. You know what I can do. That's not the case. Um, he's really going to have to continue to play well for the remainder of the season. I think, again, best case scenario is for him to come back next season again, 2-3 year, two-way deal. So obviously going to be inexpensive. It's not going to take up a very big cap hit, which is something obviously the Hurricanes are going to be looking at, since over the past few years, they're a team that tends to be right up at the salary cap. So they're going to want to be able to get as many team friendly deals as possible. Martin is not going to be a guy that is going to cost a whole lot of money. So lock him up and add the piece, add that piece to goalie depth. Again, should he not come back, I think that will likely factor into what the Hurricanes decide to do at the trade deadline. Honestly, if they make a move for a goalie, especially if it's a goalie with term remaining, I think, yeah, he's probably going to be gone. And then it would be so and so, Anderson and or Kochetkov. I think that's what you'd be looking at. If they don't make a goalie trade at the deadline, I think you're probably going to see Spencer Martin back, barring something crazy like, oh, he just falls off, or he wants too much money or whatever. But if they make a trade, I definitely think he may be gone. But I could also be wrong. Again, they need that goalie depth in the AHL for when guys get hurt, because they really don't have anyone. That's why they had to go out and get Spencer Martin, claim him off of waivers, because they didn't have anyone. So he may have a little bit of leverage there, like, hey, you need goalie depth. I can play well for you. Again, saying, things continue the way they're going. It could he could have a little bit of leverage there, in getting what he wants. Again, he's not going to get, super long term. He's not going to get a lot of money. So it would be fairly low risk for the Hurricanes. And I honestly think, no matter where he goes, whether it be staying in Carolina or going somewhere else, I think you're likely going to see a pretty cheap two-way deal. Um, Again, he is still relatively young, 28 years old. I think that's something the Hurricanes may take into consideration. Like, okay, Ronta and Anderson both 32. Who knows how much time both of them have left, with the Hurricanes or just playing in general, especially when it comes to Ronta, like what's going to happen there. I think it would be smart for them to bring back Martin on that two-way deal. And again, no matter where he goes, I think that's probably what you're going to be looking at. I think he's kind of going to be a third guy, comes up, when he's needed, plays well, can maybe stick around in a number two role, given the opportunity. Could, and you never know. That could be, with the Hurricanes as well. When Anderson's contract expires, say Martin signs a 3-year two-way or something like that, or heck, just a 2-year two-way, because this coming season is Anderson's last on his contract. Um, say he has that number 3 role next season, behind Anderson, Kochetkov, and then Martin. Then the following year after that, it's Kochetkov. He'll likely have the reins at that point. Again, barring a trade or anything like that. And then, okay, depending on how things go with Spencer Martin, he could slide into the number 2 role. It could happen, should things go well for him with the Hurricanes, because he has shown he can play well for them. It's just going to be about getting more of a sample size from him. That's really the biggest thing right now. Get more of a sample size. Likely see him tonight against Columbus. I think then we still got the remainder of the season and playoffs. So we'll see what happens with him. But I think it would be smart for the Hurricanes. You know, should he continue at the level he is at of playing good hockey for him, making the saves he needs to make, not trying to do too much or anything like that. Should he just keep doing what he's doing? I think that's smart for them to bring him back on like a 2, 3 year deal, two-way. I think that's the smartest thing for them to do, honestly. And, with him, money's not going to be, a big thing. He's not going to be expensive. I think they should things keep going at the way they're going with him, keeps playing good. I say they bring him back on relatively short term two-way deal. Again, there's still a lot of factors at play here, both the health of Anderson and Ronta, um, and then trade deadline coming up. Do the Hurricanes make a move? They have some cap space to do that this year. I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see where Spencer Martin ends up fitting into things long term for the Hurricanes in this big picture for their goaltending situation. So make sure you're following along at LO_Hurricanes, myself at Jared Ellis _96. Go subscribe on YouTube. Leave a comment on whether or not you want the Hurricanes to keep Spencer Martin around after the season. Are you in the same boat as me of needing to see a bit more of a sample size from him, or are you ready to go ahead, lock him up to that 2 year, two-way, or whatever? Let me know what you're thinking down in the comments and on the socials. Folks, as always, thank you for making Locked On Hurricanes your first listen of the day, and let's go Canes.